Hi guys, today is so exciting. We're here with Tania Gomez. I'm thrilled to introduce you to her. If you haven't met her, today's your day. Now, Tania, you've opened how many businesses and how many of them actually worked?
Oh, I don't actually even know. I think I've probably started about 10 businesses. And I've had four that I've built and scaled and sold that I guess you'd call successful. I've got one that I'm running now, which probably leaves three or four that didn't make it on the journey.
That makes sense. And the reason why I ask that is because, like you, I've started a number of businesses. Only about one in three seem to work for me. Luckily I start quite a few, but it's not like you expect a 100% hit rate. And a lot of people listening to this are like, oh, my business is so hard, or it's not succeeding, or I'm such a failure. What would you say to someone who is really struggling?
I think you just have, I think everything comes to you when you're learning a lesson and you have to see everything as a lesson and you can't really regret anything because it takes you to the next step. So for me, my first business was quite successful, but then my second business wasn't as successful. My third business was quite successful. I had a few others at the same time that I started that just didn't work. And I think you learn as much from the ones that don't work as that do work. And all of it is just learning. And you can't beat starting a business for learning skills. It's the number one thing that you can do to learn a lot of skills in a lot of different areas. And that means there's more risk there that things are going to fail, but it also means you learn quicker. You really learn it because you're doing every part of it. And I wouldn't change the failures for anything because they've, have been gifts in themselves.
Wow. Okay. So, I mean, you didn't get to this view of failure or view of things failing in a day. There's a lot of people who view failure as, oh, if my business is not succeeding, I'm a failure. It's
Mm.
like, well, hold on, what do you like at home? How do your kids view you? How do your friends view you? You're not your business. Your business is just where you happen to work. How did you go? What was the journey like for you to go from I hate being a failure to how you're viewing it now?
I don't know if I ever saw it as a failure. I think, look, there's obviously moments where you're like, wow, that didn't work, and you feel really down about it. But for me, I've always just tried to reframe it and think about the positives that came. I think it's kind of like when you work at a job, you don't go and work at a job like how you, the success criteria for a job isn't being there for your whole life, right? It's about what you learn. And every job you do, working at McDonald's, I don't regret working at McDonald's. It taught me a lot of skills that I could then apply in my next job, that I could then apply at my next job, that I could then apply at my next job. And I think it applies the same in business. You can't regret your first ever business because it wasn't a multi-million dollar success. It gave you the skills you needed to start the second and the third and the fourth, and eventually something will be successful. And I think it was Warren Buffett, who said that out of all of the businesses he's ever invested in, he only needed one to actually be a success, to actually change his life. He's only looking for one out of many, 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 possibly millions to work for him to get this kind of success that he needed. And he focused on looking for the really big opportunities because there was a lot of things he could have done, but he's looking for that one that would actually change his life. And for me, I've had multiple that have changed my life. Probably not to the same extent of Warren Buffett, but for me, that was enough. And so for me, it's always looking for the positives in what you can learn as opposed to feeling bad about what could have been that didn't occur.
That makes heaps of sense. And I guess another question I'd love to ask you is that if you go back and if you could talk to yourself 15 years ago, what would you say to yourself? At that point, you were working unbelievable hours, trying to prove yourself to the world and succeeding. But what would you say to yourself back then?
Um, I guess the big learning for me is that you're only in the race with yourself, and that the expectations and the pressure and all of that, it's never actually about proving it to somebody else. It's never about being better than someone else or beating your competition. It's you're always in a race with yourself. And I think that's good and bad. And I think what that taught me was that if I'm feeling pressure and I'm feeling like a failure, it's only me that feels that way. And so if you can stop there and look at yourself through your parents, as you said, your children's eyes, your parents' eyes, other people's eyes, and reframe it, you're probably a lot more successful than you're giving yourself credit for. And you're probably being really hard on yourself. And so yeah, for me, 15 years ago, I put a lot of pressure on myself. I think I probably still put pressure on myself now, but if things aren't going my way, I'm really a lot calmer about it, and I have a lot more faith that things are just going to work out how they should. And if things have turned out different than I expected, I take accountability for what could have I done differently, but part of me is kind of just trusts that something better is going to come, and that's why that opportunity hasn't panned out.
That makes sense. That's really helpful for people. That's helpful for me. I'm loving it. Um, Someone said to me recently that, oh, I could do so well, but I self-sabotage. And as soon as someone says that, you're like, actually, you've probably got a systems problem in your business that you need to fix. And then we don't have to have this conversation. What would you say to someone who's saying, oh, I always get close to doing well and then I self-sabotage? Like, what's behind people saying that?
I think in business, a lot of people's issues are themselves. I feel like I work with clients often that I can fix their systems problems, but I
Mhm.
can't fix them. I'm not a therapist, nor do I want to be a therapist. And I think a lot of people do need to invest in the work of themselves, because in business, the number one chokehold is you, is the owner. So I understand the concept of self-sabotage. I think if people are saying that, at least they have some kind of um, self-reflection enough to identify that that's the challenge. I think systems problems are a big problem, and people often don't realize that, and maybe they're blaming other things. But I think it takes someone quite brave to say that they realize that they are stopping themselves from being successful.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know what? If anyone else had said that, I've been like, I don't really view it that way. But if you're saying that, I trust your judgment. You've coached how many clients?
I've worked with a lot of clients. I don't tend to coach. I try to avoid the word coach because I don't help with mindset. I help with action, so it's more consultation.
Mhm.
But yeah, I've worked with about 8,000 NDIS providers, and I'm a NLP. I've done NLP, and I used to do hypnotherapy with people a very long time ago, and I was a coach back then. But now I feel like I coach less and consult more, which is more giving advice than helping motivate people to change.
That makes heaps of sense. And let's be real, anyone who's helped 8,000 NDIS businesses, they probably know a thing or two. I guess something that you chatted with me about in another conversation we had a few weeks ago was you were talking about doing your marketing by giving, as opposed to being that still provider or whoever who's like, oh, have you got a referral for me? How do you support businesses to grow by giving? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I feel like the NGIS specifically, but most sectors are an ecosystem. We play a role inside this ecosystem, and there's problems that every provider has, or every participant has, if you're focusing your marketing on participants. And really your job is to solve a problem for them. And if you can solve a problem for them, then you're not selling or marketing at all. Your solutions, you're providing a solution, and that's a different way of looking at it. And so for me, I solve the problem of complex compliance in someone's business. If someone's struggling with audit, or they're struggling to understand what the rules are and how to apply them in their business, I help solve that problem. So for me, I give away a lot for free. We do 13 free events a year. I think it's 163 events this year we're doing for free for people that cost me money, for venues and other things that we do for free, because we want to give before we ever take or before we ever ask. And so I really believe in that. And I talk to my clients often about, instead of going and asking for a referral, how can you solve a support coordinator's problem? So if you are the best at young men's mental health, as an example, if that's your expertise, instead of going and saying, I need participants with mental health issues, how about you run a free workshop for support coordinators about helping young men with mental health issues? How about you run a free webinar, or write an ebook, or write an infographic, something simple? How about you put on a morning tea around mental health and showcase your successes? So you're always adding value. And it doesn't mean you can't promote your services at the same time, but if you're positioning yourself as an expert in that area, you're getting credibility, you're gaining, influence in the space, and you're also giving something valuable to other people, whether or not they decide to work with you. And for me, that's the NGS is an ecosystem, as I said. And if you're giving to that ecosystem, it's going to give back to you. And it might take a while, but it's a very different approach to give me a client than let me help you solve a problem.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the thing is, if say that person wants to have something to give, you can create something that lasts forever, like a PDF that you can email or a video that you can throw on your website and then give people a link to it. Just keep it short, you know. And and I notice you do a lot of stuff now that doesn't even come back to you indirectly. Like some of those events, they lead to clients 6 months, a year later, because that's you practicing what you preach. But a lot of what you do is actually not for you. You just do it to be helpful. What are some of the projects you're excited about at the moment that aren't even for you?
Yeah, lots. So I'm working on a book at the moment. We're working on a book project that has 12 co-authors. So there's 12 of us together writing a book together about future-proofing your NGS business. And so that, it isn't really for me as far as I'm a co-author on that and I'm pulling this project together. But really, I feel like this is needed in the space. We do 13 events a month at the moment, which will be 25 events a month for free by the middle of the year. And all of that it costs me money. It doesn't actually make me money. It's not revenue generating, but it is really there because, it's a dramatically challenging time for providers, and 50% of businesses in their first year die, and that's 95% of small businesses in the first 5 years. And most NGS providers are between 1 and 3 years old. So we've got a 95% chance statistically that these businesses will fail. Add extra government regulation and change management to that, and small profit margins within the NDIS. And I think you've probably got closer to a 98% success, failure rate. So if we can do anything, so my research that I'm doing in my PhD has told me that so far what I've learned is that the number one thing that makes a difference is actually a peer group. And so if I can establish a peer group, it might cost me a little bit of money, but if that actually makes a difference between people surviving in business or not, then it's definitely something I want to devote my time to. I also have a project called Transforming Hope Through Action, which is a group of very amazing, inspirational people that are trying to help people realize that with people with disability, hoping that their lives are going to change isn't enough. We actually have to take action to change their lives for the better. And so that's something that I'm very excited to be part of. And there's actually many, many more, but I'll stop there for now.
That's all right, because I guess what you're saying is there's so many things that you're doing to help people get together. And like I notice this a lot when you're putting things together. Most people they'll put something together and they'll have themselves on the brochure. You'll put things together and you won't even be on the brochure. It just came from you. And I'm like, there's a level of unselfishness there that I don't see often. And people look at what you're doing, they're like, okay, well, she's the Tania Gomez of NDIS. Oh, she's probably selfish or she's probably this. It's like, I don't think that's what got you where you are. And so, yeah, what would be your recommendation to someone who thinks their way of growing the business is to hoard the referrals, make it all about them, make it all about them guarding their world, only let the people they've known for 47 years into their business and basically be me, 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 because I'm seeing that in probably 30% of the new providers coming through, and I'm seeing that in a certain percentage of the medium-sized providers. What would be your recommendation to them? Not the marketing answer, like what's just the truth according to your worldview there?
Yeah, so two things I want to say there. The first is the reason I used the name Tania Gomez Consulting, I hate it actually. I did that
Yeah.
specifically because I sold Provider Plus, which I'd spent 8 years building, registered 8,000 providers in, and built a great brand. Number one in the registration space, 53% of all registrations under my leadership in NGS was done by us. I had to signal to the market that I'd left that business because my legacy was no longer with me. So the only way that I could leave and make the statement that I'm no longer associated was by using my name. We now use Provider Collective as a trading name, and into the future, that'll be more because for me, it's the collective that actually makes the difference. It's not me. I facilitate the conversation, but I'm certainly not the only one in the room that has answers. I'm one of many people who can help in the space. I know my spot. I know that I'm number one when it comes to quality and compliance in the space. I know I can solve that problem for any provider. I am 100% sure. But if you come to me with a marketing issue, I have a marketing qualification. I've marketed in lots of business. I probably could add some value, but I'm not the number one in that, and I'm not going to pretend to be, but I'll refer to somebody who is. and know that if I'm referring to them, that I think they're better than me. I think they're number one and they're going to solve that problem better than me. And by doing that and by having this network where I refer a lot, even though I could keep them on, I do projects with people who do the same thing as me and still refer to them when I'm at capacity or when the client's better suited to them. And I think it's really important to do because not everybody is meant for me. And I can't help 200,000 NDIS providers. I haven't got the capacity to help everybody. So I need to know who's almost as good as me or who can help in situations. So lawyers refer to me often. They'll refer to me when they get a case where they don't know the practice standards as well as me. I'm a lot cheaper than a lawyer. I can do a lot of the grunt work, and then the solicitor can take it from there. So a lot of lawyers give work to me. And then when I'm doing work that might be responding to complex issues, whether it's a death or whether it's a reportable incident, and I'm dealing with that with a participant, when it gets to needing a lawyer, I'm certainly know when the time is to pass it on when it's no longer within my expertise. When I'm no longer the best solution for that provider, I will pass that on. And my job is to know who to pass that on to. And I think it's exactly the same for participants and providers. So if you're working with a participant and you're helping them with community access, and you know that your sweet spot is autistic boys between 7 and 15, and that boy's about to turn 19 and your services don't quite fit him anymore, I think the right thing to do is to find the best person for that age group. Or you can upskill yourself to be the best person. But most of the time, if you know your sweet spot and you operate within it, then you have another provider who works with 19 to 35-year-olds and you articulate to them. And when someone comes to them with a younger brother who they can't help, they're going to give it to you, knowing that that's where you do best. And for me, that's what it's all about. I could say I could work with children or I could work with all people with autism, but if I know that that's my sweet spot, one, I'm going to do it better. I'm going to give all to that because that's the problem I want to solve, and I'm going to be best at the world at it. And knowing those boundaries about yourself is really important. I have 13 qualifications. I have business qualifications, marketing qualifications, training qualifications, teaching qualifications, lots of different things. But I know that right now my skill set is solving the problem of quality and compliance. I do that better than I do anything else, and I think better than anybody else. So if someone comes to me with a solution that might be peripheral, I just can't, I think I'm doing them a disservice by taking on that client. So for me, it's not hoarding, it's providing a whole solution and knowing when I'm out of my depth or when someone else can solve that problem better than me. And sometimes I take on a project and know that maybe I'm not the best, but then tell the client and say, look, I'll do this because you want to work with me and we have a relationship, whatever that might be. But I'll only do it if you also bring these other three people in and we do it together. So the areas I'm deficient in, they can fill in and together we'll have a whole solution. And we do lots of projects that way, lots of very collaborative projects. And the best people I see in the NGS space do the same for their participants. They form a multidisciplinary team around that participant and give them a whole solution as opposed to trying to be everything for that participant when they know, or maybe they don't know, but maybe they should know that actually they're not providing the best supports they can.
That's remarkable. I guess what you're saying is the roadmap to being right at the top of the food chain is to say no to everything that's not your food. Just
Yeah.
stick to what you're amazing at. And I guess what you're saying, I guess the byproduct of that is you'll always have the work that you love doing because you chose those people. And you'll be very, very good at it because you only would choose things that are right in your wheelhouse. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and I think that's also part of why I use my personal brand so much is that I put out there exactly who I am. I'm loud, I'm outspoken, I'm sometimes a little bit bossy, and I love to talk. And if you don't want to work with someone like that, I want you to know that up front and use someone else because compliance people are usually quiet and introverted and don't have as big opinions as me. So if you want someone like that, I don't want you coming to me because I'm not going to change who I am for one client. This is who I am. This is what I think my strengths are. And I want to attract the people who want to work with someone like me. And if you're looking for someone who's not those things, and you come to me, I can introduce you to other compliance people who are like that. Or you can simply do your research and find someone who might be better suited for you.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it comes from like that abundance mindset. Look, there's plenty to go around. I don't have to be that person who's all about me. Tanya, I love what you're doing. I love the projects you're doing. I love what you bring to to other people, and I love what you just give away like it's going out of fashion. If someone wants to get in touch with you, how would they find out about what you do, or how would they find out about, are they right to work with you?
Yeah, so probably the website or our socials is the best to start. So if you wanted to go to our Instagram or our YouTube channel or our LinkedIn, we're very active in all those platforms. It's just Tania Gomez Consulting on all of the channels, or on our website, which is taniagomez.com.au.
Love it. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, Tania, and thank you for what you're doing to help people in space.
Thanks so much.